Brought to you by runtogold.com, the premier source for monetary science applied to geopolitical, international, and economic, financial news and events. Welcome back to the 34th episode of the runtogold.com podcast. This episode is from an interview I did with Harry Douglas on his Car Concerns radio show in Knoxville, Tennessee.
My next guest is Trace Meyer. He wrote the book, The Great Credit Contraction. And here's a quote. He says, "We've already jumped from the plane. It's just a matter of when and how hard we will hit the ground." Welcome to the show, Trace.
Hi, Harry. How you doing?
Great, great. Tell me, why'd you write this book?
Well, the main reason I wrote the book is because I got so many questions on this topic. I've studied economics a lot. I've studied a lot of business, and so a couple of years ago, I'd always be talking with people about economics and talking about, oh, man, we've got something really big coming down, and it's going to be bad. And nobody seemed to understand what was happening. So I started a website because I just couldn't talk to all the people that had the questions. And eventually the website started getting, hundreds of hits, and then people started requesting a foundational document on the economic laws that are at work, that are causing what's happening. And so that's the reason I wrote the book, is because I got so much requests from people because they wanted to understand what was happening and why.
Okay, let's talk about the website for a second. I'm on the website, creditcontraction.com, excuse me. Credit Contraction.
Yeah, my main website is called runtogold.com, and then creditcontraction.com is where people can actually purchase the book.
That's right. You can get the ebook right there, The Great Credit Contraction, and it's at creditcontraction.com. Okay, let's bring in Larry Bradley, who is my co-host every Tuesday and Thursday from Omaha, Nebraska. Larry, do you have any questions here?
Absolutely. Trace, please say again, because I didn't quite hear it. Maybe our listeners didn't either. You say you have a main website, and the Credit Contraction is to sell the book. What's the main website again, please?
My main website is called runtogold.com.
Okay.
Runtogold.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I do at Run to Gold, I publish articles on a pretty regular basis where I apply monetary science to the current events that are going on in the world economy.
And you are a scientist, right?
A monetary scientist.
A monetary scientist.
So I study monetary theory. I have a degree in accounting and also a degree in law. So I come to the field with a pretty interesting background. And then I have also studied extensively in the Austrian School of Economics, which is like Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard, as opposed to the classical Keynesian School of Economics or even the Chicago School.
And I see here,
three main branches.
I see here where you have a degree in accounting from Brigham Young and a law degree from the California Western School of Law.
Yes, sir.
I tell you what, you come with some great credentials. Okay, tell me what the 6 financial mistakes that our government is making right now.
Oh, okay. Well, this is really big. I wrote an article called "How to Intentionally Exacerbate the Greater Depression," and in a book written, in 1963. So this is a decades-old book. Murray Rothbard, one of the great economists of the Austrian School, laid out these 6 government policies that could really hobble the adjustment process of the economy that'll prolong a depression. And so the first thing that governments could do is they could prevent or delay the liquidation of bad assets. The second thing they could do is they could inflate the currency supply further, printing the money out of thin air. The third thing that they would do is they would keep wage rates up. They would keep wage rates high. The fourth thing, which is related to the wage rates, would be to keep the prices high. And then the fifth thing they would do is stimulate consumption and discourage savings. And then the sixth thing would be to subsidize unemployment. And so in this case, with our current economy, President Obama is doing all 6 of these things to a very massive degree that we haven't seen before in America. So this is only going to intentionally exacerbate the Greater Depression and prolong it and make it more painful than it otherwise would need to be.
I see. Larry, anything you want to throw in there?
What options did we have?
Speak up, Larry. I can barely hear you. Speak up, Larry. I can barely hear you.
Okay. What options did we have to do other than what we're doing, Trace? In other words, if those are the things, the wrong things to do, what should we have done instead?
Well, that's an interesting question. As a monetary scientist in the Austrian school, I do try to present things objectively versus subjectively. I try to distinguish when I do the two. And so when you ask, well, what should we do, that's very much a subjective value judgment. Well, what should we do? That's left in the realm of politics. But, my own personal belief is, well, I like freedom, peace, and prosperity. I like to have a lot of wealth for society. And so what I personally would like to see happen is for these 6 things, for the government policies not to intentionally exacerbate the Depression. I'd like to see the liquidation of bad assets happen in a quicker, more orderly, well, it wouldn't necessarily be more orderly, but just in a quicker way. For example, they changed the accounting standards to make it even more, even harder to value the assets that are on the bank's balance sheets and the other corporations' balance sheets. Well, we could have not done that. We could have instead marked these assets to market and let a lot of these large institutions fail if they had bad assets on their books. But instead, we step in and we prevent this liquidation, and then we inflate the currency supply, print a bunch of money out of thin air, and bail out some of these institutions with that money. And so really what that does is it destroys a lot of wealth, and I don't think that that's something that we should do, but it is nonetheless what we have done, and so there will be consequences to that, and those consequences will be that the Depression will be even worse than it otherwise normally would have been.
So what should we do? What should we be doing now? I mean, that's still kind of the basic question.
What should we do is really left to the American people. See, if we let these large institutions and organizations fail, then it will be very painful politically in the short term, and so that's why we're bailing them out. It's kind of the same thing that we see happening over in China. They have a bunch of these state-owned enterprises that operate at a loss, but they continue to waste a lot of their wealth by perpetuating these state-owned enterprises because it would be more painful politically to let them fail. And I think that that's the same thinking that's coming out of Washington, is that, well, we don't want to have Bank of America and Citigroup and General Motors and Chrysler and General Electric. We don't want to have all these companies fail all within a very short time, because that would lead to a lot of change in our economy all at once. And so, I mean, I can see where their thinking is and their analysis is, and it's really up for debate in the political sphere as far as what we should do. I think we should let them fail, but that would definitely upset a lot of people's individual lives, and they would have to find different ways to make money. And that type of change is not very politically appealing, even though in the long run we will all suffer a lot more from not taking the medicine early. It's kind of like, by analogy, on Friday night the Fed bought a bunch of alcohol and they served it all up at the party, and now it's Saturday morning and everybody's kind of got a hangover, and to cure the headache they want to just drink more alcohol. Well, it's not going to cure the problem, but it will at least make the headache go away for a couple years, and hopefully the politicians, because of how their election cycle is, well, they just want to push off the headache for a couple years so they can get reelected. So we just keep pushing off the headache, unfortunately, and prevent the healing process from taking place.
All right, if you ever get a hangover, here it is: tomato juice and a beer. Mix it 50-50, it'll go away.
Yeah, that'll fix it. Well, actually, the solution to our current monetary problems and our economic problems are very simple. and they're contained in the Constitution of the United States. And the reason we're in this mess is because we've ignored those principles and that fundamental law of the land, that supreme law of the land. We've ignored it, and that's why we're in the problem that we're in.
Give me an example of what you mean by that.
Well, this is straight from chapter 1 of my book. When we talk about money and currency, we aren't very specific with our definitions, and there's a reason for that, because if we can keep people in ignorance, then we can keep ripping them off, basically. And so what I do is I distinguish between currency, which is the medium of exchange that we use in our ordinary daily transactions, and money substitutes, and illusions. And so money must be a tangible asset. It's got to be a commodity. A money substitute would be a credit instrument, a bill of credit, which would give you claim on that money. And an illusion would just be something that's a complete illusion. It has no claim on purchasing power. And so in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 of the U.S. Constitution, which Article 1, Section 8 is the powers delegated to Congress, Congress is given the power to, quote, coin money and regulate the value thereof. And so the Constitution doesn't say what money is, only that it's something that's coined rather than printed. Now, in Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the states are prohibited from engaging in certain powers, engaging in certain activities. And then under the 10th Amendment, any powers not specifically delegated to the federal government are retained by the states or by the people themselves. And so under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, it states that no state shall emit bills of credit or make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. And so what we have in our current monetary system is we have an illusion, which is the Federal Reserve Note dollar. In effect, it's a bill of credit that is guaranteed no purchasing power. And the federal government, under 31 U.S.C. 5101 through 5118, which sets up the U.S. monetary system, they've made this Federal Reserve Note dollar legal tender for all debts, public and private. It's put right on your $20 bill. And this power to make anything legal tender was never granted to the federal government. And so it's retained by the people or by the states. And so the states, they can make stuff legal tender, but they can only make gold and silver legal tender under Article 1, Section 10. And so the problem we've got is that we've disobeyed the Constitution, and in the process, we've taken on additional risk in our currency, which is that medium of exchange in our daily transaction. And that risk has led to these malinvestments and misallocations of capital. And the Founding Fathers understood this problem very well, because it was the continental dollar that really led to the exact same problems during their time. And out of that came the Constitution, and they're like, no way are we going back to illusions and paper currency. So they wrote these clauses, these monetary powers and disabilities directly into the Constitution. And so if we wanted to fix our current monetary system, it would be very simple. What we would do is we would eliminate the 28% rate gain tax on gold and silver as collectibles. Then we would remove the legal tender status of Federal Reserve Note dollars. And so you wouldn't be able to fashion them in judgments when you go to court. You wouldn't be able to demand payment in Federal Reserve Notes. And instead, we'd just use the legal tender of gold and silver, which they actually are legal tenders still under federal law. And so that's the two things that we need to do to completely cure almost all of our economic ills. And the reason this would cure it is because it would remove the risk between our currency and our purchasing power, because the illusion, the Federal Reserve Note, can become absolutely worthless through hyperinflation. And so that's the risk. And as they continue to, remember the second point, as they continue to inflate further, what it causes is this illusion to evaporate. and become worth less and less until eventually it's not worth anything. And when that currency then of hyperinflation happens, well, that leads to shortages and rationing and all types of other problems. So that's a little bit of our monetary history and our monetary law and how we've strayed from it and are now in the circumstances that we're in. And it's actually a very natural and predictable consequence of straying from that monetary law, because it's happened time after time after time to every country and every nation that's ever tried to do it. So, I mean, it's kind of like a ball. When you drop the ball, it goes to the ground. It doesn't float into the air. Well, why should we think we're any different than hundreds of other countries throughout history?
Hey, we're talking to Trace Meyer. He's wrote the book, The Great Credit Contraction. And when we get back, I'm going to ask him how we can profit and generate wealth despite these contracting markets. Hey, we'll be right back with Car Concerns after the break. When your money is on the line, and I'm proving it right here, call the line that's on the money. That's Car Concerns. You can call us at 675-8255. That's 675-TALK. Or outside of the calling area, 1-877-958-5850. That's 1-877-958-5850. Car Concerns, right back after the break.
The American Motorist Vote campaign continues to roll on down the highway, signing up masses of American motorists who are fed up with the burdens that are placed on them. Poor highway and road infrastructure, high gasoline tax, toll roads everywhere. The pending cap and tax program that is making its way through Congress that promises high fuel prices from now on. Harry is fighting for the American motorist every minute of every day, calling on your Congress and Senate representatives to remind them that the millions upon millions of American voters are watching, listening, and voting. We don't get fooled again. No. AmericanMotoristVote.com. That's AmericanMotoristVote.com. American Motorist Vote campaign. Our power is in our numbers. Let's don't get fooled again.
Attention 2009 automotive retail consumers. With new car and truck sales at the slowest and lowest pace in decades, 2009 could very well be a car buyer's market. Harry Douglas has established a network of new car dealers to sell Car Concerns listeners brand new vehicles at greatly reduced prices. These are prices that they will never advertise. Become a Car Concerns satisfied retail automotive consumer. Call 622-3032. That's 622-3032. Or email Harry at carconcerns.com. That's Harry at carconcerns.com. Attention 2009 automotive retail consumers. With new car and truck sales at the slowest and lowest pace in decades, 2009 could very well be a car buyer's market. Harry Douglas has established a network of new car dealers to sell Car Concerns listeners brand new vehicles at greatly reduced prices. These are prices that they will never advertise. Become a Car Concerns satisfied retail automotive consumer. Call 622-3032. That's 622-3032. Or email Harry at carconcerns.com. That's Harry at carconcerns.com.
Harco Enterprises in the Grove Center in Oak Ridge is the place to go for your company's logo needs. They can create your company an identifying logo and screen print or embroider it on ball caps, T-shirts, or just about anything that you use to get your message out. They do our Car Concerns T-shirts, and they look great. That's Harco Enterprises, Grove Center, Oak Ridge. Their phone number is 483-6814. Do you have daily expenses that are weighing on your budget? Let's face it, the economic future is not so bright that we have to wear sunglasses. Have you considered a reverse mortgage? There's no income or credit requirements to qualify. You continue to live in the home and you hold the deed. No payment is ever due on your home as long as you live in your home. If you are 62 years of age and own your home, you may qualify for a reverse mortgage. The National Reverse Mortgage Lender Association defines reverse mortgage as a special type of loan used by senior Americans to convert the equity in their home into cold hard cash. The money you receive from the reverse mortgage can be used for anything. Call 865-622-3032, 865-622-3032, 865-622-3032. Hey, an operator is waiting to help you qualify for a reverse mortgage. Call today. That's 865-622-3032.
The all-new CarConcerns.com is live. Now you can ride shotgun with Harry on your computer via live streaming audio no matter where you are on the most informative automotive website on the internet, www.carconcerns.com. It's your one-stop shop for all things automotive. And while you're there, check out Harry's Vehicle Consumer CD, The Truth About Car Buying. Join the live broadcast from the Horn Radio Network on your PC every Monday through Friday starting at 9 a.m. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.carconcerns.com today.
Talk Radio 850 WKVL, Knoxville, WGAP, Maryville, WLOD, Loudon, the Horn Radio Network.
This is Car Concerns with your host, Harry Douglas. If you have a car-related question, call 675-8255. Or if you're outside the 865 area code, call us toll-free at 877-958-5850. Now, here's Harry.
Okay, I just want to tell you, Friday morning right here on Car Concerns, I'm going to have Robert Parrish. He is a coordinator for the Georgia Mountain Moonshine Cruise-In, which is in Hiwassee, Georgia, August 13th, 14th, and 15th. These guys are all the time up at Pigeon Forge. So he's going to be on the show Friday morning in the 10 o'clock hour. He's going to tell us what the Moonshine Cruise-In's up to and all the great cars there. Anyhow, let's go back to my guest here, Trace Meyer. Larry, are you still with us?
I am still, yes, indeed.
Hey, any questions for Trace on his book, The Great Credit Contraction?
Well, Trace, I halfway understood what you were talking about. I'm not sure that our listeners do. Let's back it up here just a little bit. In other words, what is the value of our money based on? Can we talk about that just a little bit and maybe give people some background? You might even want to, I don't know how far back you want to go, but we had way back at the turn of the 20th century, we had this thing going on about a debate about whether the value of the money ought to be based on silver or based on gold. Maybe you can educate us a little bit on that as well.
Okay. Well, I'll just go back to the founding of the country. We actually used what were called Spanish. They were pieces of 8. They were the Spanish milled dollar. And under the 1792 Coinage Act, a dollar was defined as 371.25 grains of silver. And so, remember Article 1, Section 8. Congress can coin money and regulate the value thereof. So they said that a dollar was 371.25 grains of fine silver. Well, imagine the problem we would have in performing calculations if we changed the definition of a year from 365 days to 10 days or 50 days. You know, imagine if a year meant both. We would have all types of problems, wouldn't we? I mean, the president can be president for 4 years, but 4 years can be either 40 days or 200 days. Well, unfortunately, that's the problem we've got, is that we've taken this definition, this unit of measurement called the dollar, and we've changed its definition over time. And so it was silver, and then we actually defined it as also as gold. So 1 ounce of gold was equal to $20.67. And then we had this big debate in the 1896 election with William Jennings Bryan, and he wanted the free and unlimited coinage of silver. He gave his great speech, "You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold." Well, anyways, we created the Federal Reserve in 1913, and the Federal Reserve is a private organization. It's a private bank that's owned by the large banks throughout the nation. And now the Federal Reserve has issued its Federal Reserve notes, which are liabilities of the Federal Reserve. And initially, these notes were redeemable for lawful money. So you could get gold or silver for them. You could get something real, something in your hand. But eventually, for example, John F. Kennedy, he tried to allow for the silver notes to be produced. Well, a couple months later, there was that unfortunate event where he was assassinated, and then a little bit later, the redeemability into silver was completely revoked in 1968. And in 1971, and going back a little bit earlier, in 1933, Roosevelt made it illegal to hold gold coins, and basically said, well, we know we promised all y'all a bunch of gold for your notes, but we're not giving you any gold, and if you have any gold, we're going to throw you in jail, because I guess gold is so dangerous to governments and politicians, financial weapon of mass destruction, if you will. So 1968, the government defaulted on all its silver obligations, and then in 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. So all the international players, all the, like France and England, they held a bunch of dollars which could be converted for gold. Well, Nixon said, well, we're not going to pay any gold. And so in 1971, the dollar, the Federal Reserve note dollar, became backed by absolutely nothing. It became a complete illusion of purchasing power. And so even though it'll still buy something today, you're not actually guaranteed to be able to purchase anything with it. And so now our currency, as opposed to our money, our currency, the Federal Reserve note dollars in our wallets, they're backed by absolutely nothing. You can't buy anything. You're not guaranteed to buy anything with them. Whereas our money, like a quarter or a nickel or a dime, well, that's actually a physical metal. That's zinc or steel or copper. So you are guaranteed to be able to purchase something with that because it's a tangible asset. In other words, it is real money. So we have this dual monetary system where we use illusions and money. And so some of our money does have intrinsic value, like our quarters or nickels or dimes, but most of our money is just an illusion, and it's a digit in a database at a bank, which is, it doesn't even exist as a paper illusion.
I love that analogy. I love that analogy. In my sales meeting to my salesman every morning, I was a new car dealer for over 25 years, and I used to say those exact words. I said, folks, we've got to go out here. We've got to create the illusion. And that's exactly what the government's done.
Well, and you brought up William Jennings Bryan, that election. Well, that's when the Wizard of Oz was written, Wizard of Ounces, and you've got this wizard behind the curtain that's got to create this illusion, and we got to keep it going as long as we can, because eventually the illusion dissipates and people wake up and realize that their currency is an illusion, that it won't buy. It's not guaranteed to buy anything, and then they begin to move into different assets to protect and preserve their capital. Because a lot of people work really hard, and they want to save, for a rainy day, or they want to save for retirement, or they want to save to go on a vacation, whatever it is. And when you have an illusion, their ability to save is greatly hindered. And so that's when people begin moving out of that illusion into different assets.
Hey, we're talking
in order to protect and preserve their capital.
We're talking to Trace Meyer. His book is The Great Credit Contraction. Hey, let's go to the phones. Hey, David, welcome to Car Concerns. Thanks for calling in. You're calling in on WKVL 850. Any question for Trace?
No, I'm just glad to hear y'all talking about it. I think if you'll remember, I've been preaching along these same lines for many years on this program. And I think instead of an illusion, I think a better term for it would be a Ponzi scheme.
Well,
that's what it is.
That's what as a matter of fact, that's what Trace says right here. He says today's financial markets are operating as if they're a part of the world's largest Ponzi scheme.
Well, they are a Ponzi scheme. That's all it is. And when the only thing that backs our money is the good faith of the American people. And when they figure out, what it is, it's going to be a problem. But those silver certificates that Kennedy issued,
right?
If they had been allowed to produce those in great numbers, it would have made those little green things you got your billfold now expensive toilet paper. That's all they would have been worth. And I've said forever, that's not the only reason Kennedy was killed. But if you'd been producing those for 40-some years, and somebody came along and said, "Hey, that may be unconstitutional and illegal. I think I'm going to have the Treasury Department start printing these silver certificates," and money didn't mean anything to you. All you had to do was print it. All your friends were extremely wealthy because they knew you, and it's power. And what do you think would happen to that person? It's a real simple decision.
Well, exactly. I mean, because what you're talking about is the ethics of money production. Why is a certain group allowed to just print up as much of these little paper tickets, and anyone else who does it can actually go to jail if they print up these, if they print up counterfeit paper tickets. And really,
like the Hunt brothers.
What's that?
Like the Hunt brothers with silver. It was a little bit different situation, but the government doesn't like competition and corruption.
Well, they do like their monopoly on violence. I'll give you that.
Can I bring one other thing up, Harry?
Go ahead.
And I think it's along the same line. But I tried to do this on T's program also. But the Bilderberg Group met this last week in Greece. Have you seen anything about it in the newspaper or on television?
I have not.
Well, it's been in the news all over the world except here in the U.S.
And why is that?
We have a free press, don't we?
Why is that?
Well, if you'll look,
why won't we cover it?
Some of our more affluent people who are owners and who make the decisions about what goes into print and on our television programs are members of this group, and they take an oath of silence. Basically, not an oath of silence, but they agree that they're not going to reveal what's been said. But when these people meet, they make policy decisions on our money and everything else, and when they make a decision, shortly thereafter, it starts happening. But yet we get no coverage in this country from any type of media. And I don't know your guest that well, but I would hope that he would agree with me on that, because they do make monetary decisions for us. You have 7 banks that make up the Federal Reserve, if I remember correctly. 4 of them based outside the continental U.S., which is unconstitutional as well as illegal.
Right.
And, guys, you got about 15 families that own those 7 banks, and they are the people that control what goes on in this country and everywhere else.
Well, them and big oil. I don't argue with you there. Hey, Trace, what do you got to say to that?
Well, I definitely agree that under Article 1, Section 8, the power is granted to Congress that there's no authority granted to the federal government to create the Federal Reserve. Uh-oh, you there?
Yes. I'm sorry, David dropped off.
Oh, that's so there's no authority under the Constitution for the creation of a central bank. And so the Federal Reserve, created under the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 and as amended, that's an unconstitutional law. Now, its unconstitutionality has never been addressed before the Supreme Court, but I agree that, we should repeal that act, have our congressmen repeal that act, and dissolute the Federal Reserve. Why do we need it? I don't think that we need it personally, and it's unconstitutional. So I think we should be following the supreme law of the land. And
Okay, we're due a break right here, but I'm going to go through it. Let's go to Mike. Mike calling in on WKVL 850. Hey, Mike, welcome to Car Concerns. Did you have a question for Trace?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you for taking my call. During the Bush administration, there was some talk about relying on oil as the new, basically, monetary currency. Could you discuss some on that point, and how is it that we moved out? I mean, there's some of the reasons why we moved out of the gold standard, and why the silver standard that has been fought for since actually the mid-1800s was never accepted?
Okay, I'll address your issue of why the government's moved away from the gold standard. The great economist Ludwig von Mises, he said that to understand the importance of sound money, you have to understand that it's devised as a bulwark against despotic inroads on the part of government. It belongs in the same class as political constitutions and bills of rights. And so the reason we've moved away from a sound money standard, whether it's gold or silver or platinum or palladium It doesn't really matter. It just has to be a tangible asset. The reason we moved away from that is so that the government can engage in inflation, which is a form of confiscation and taxation without representation and without due process of law. And so what it allows is it allows the government to take property without getting the voters' consent. And government, because they like to increase their own power and feed those resources to special interests, that's mainly the reason we moved away from a sound money standard onto this illusion, so that it can favor certain special interests and certain political groups, and at the cost of the regular working person. And what was the other issue you wanted me to address?
Well, the other issue was during the Bush administration, there was extremely serious talk of converting oil into the new standard.
Yeah,
petroleum into the new standard, and there was even some movement into allowing certain individuals to acquire quantities and then to use those quantities and the contracts as a means of currency.
Right. Now, this is a very interesting issue, using oil as a currency, because oil is very expensive to store, whereas gold or some other metal is not as
dropped off. I'm sorry about that. Somebody dropped off. I can't tell. No, I think Mike's still there. But anyhow, go ahead and kill Mike, and we'll see where it's at. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Addressing his issue about oil as a currency. So oil is expensive to store, and whereas a metal is not as expensive to guard. You can stick it in a vault, and it's just fine, but oil leaks or corrodes things. And what we're seeing is that oil is beginning to trade like a currency, but because it's now in backwardation, which is where the price for delivery in the future is more than the price currently, getting to be a lot of stockpiles of oil, and so they're storing it in super oil tankers all over the world. And this is only showing that the market is searching for some asset to function as money, and because so many people don't really view gold as money, it hasn't really come into its own yet, but it will, because that's where people always go for the safety and liquidity, because its cost of storage is much lower, and therefore it's a much more competitive currency than something like oil or wheat or soybeans or cattle, for example.
May I ask one more question, Harry?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, the price of gold is now hovering around 900 to 850. Do you see a movement for gold to reach higher than that, significantly higher? And then, is there a way to prevent speculation and hoarding of gold like it was previously and with oil currently?
Well, the way to prevent hoarding is the same thing they did in 1933. You can round up people, throw them in concentration camps, and murder them. That's what Lenin did. That's what Hitler did. That's what Franklin D. Roosevelt did. All of this to prevent the credit liquidation, and which has the effect of prolonging the depression. But as far as like where gold will go, this is what I talk about extensively on my site, and it's not necessarily that one should buy gold. That's a question. You should buy gold if it's cheap. You should sell it if it's expensive. But gold's role is in being able to provide the mental calculations of value, in being able to determine whether something is cheap or whether something is expensive. And because the Federal Reserve note is an illusion, it's impossible to really perform those measurements because it's a moving ruler, whereas gold is always the same. And so what I do is I look at the relationship between gold and other assets like the Dow or real estate, for example. If you go to the homepage, you'll see the S&P 500 priced in gold over the last 30 years. And so you can see where the stocks are cheap and where the stocks are expensive. And so that's how I determine whether gold is a good purchase or not, because gold is not a portfolio asset, which is how you're viewing it. Instead, everything else is. And you have to use gold to denominate your balance sheets to determine where you're at financially. It's your measuring stick.
Anything else, Mike?
No, that's basically what I was asking. I mean, the one thing that I do have with regard to any of these commodities being used as a standard is I'm sure you remember what happened during the 70s and 80s. You had certain individuals hoarding silver, doing the same thing basically with what they did with oil.
You talking about the Hunt brothers?
Well, yes, there were others in Texas. One person had accumulated an entire underground storage and hoarded it till the price went to unsustainable heights, started selling it slowly, and then when he got his profit off of it, huge profit, seems to be like a reoccurring theme here. They dumped it on the market, and I know one person, a family member, who actually lost quite a few dollars on that.
Right. Well, the monetary metals, just like the Federal Reserve note dollars or the Brazilian reals, sometimes they're cheap and sometimes they're expensive. For example, real recently, the United States Treasuries got to be pretty expensive. So it was in people's best interest to probably sell them and buy something else. So sometimes they're good to buy, sometimes they're good to sell, but the real value of them comes in being able to use them as a measuring stick to know how much you need for retirement, for example, and being able to use that ruler to make those calculations. Otherwise, you're going to build a really lopsided castle that's not very stable.
Exactly. And I do thank you for your answering my questions, and thank you, Harry, for taking my call today.
Hey, Mike, as always, you're a welcome guest on Car Concerns. Hey, I'm going to take a break right here. Hey, this is Car Concerns. When your money's on the line, call the line that's on the money. We're going to be right back with Trace Meyer. We'll finish the hour out. His book is The Great Credit Contraction. Hey, Trace, where you buy that book?
You can get it, just go to runtogold.com, and there's a banner you can go click on to find the book.
Okay, hey, thanks a lot. Hey, we'll be right back with you right after the break. This is Harry Douglas. This is Car Concerns. Hey, don't forget, Larry Bradley up in Omaha, Nebraska, thecenterstrikesback.com. Hey, Larry, we'll be right back with you as well.
Honda, Toyota Camry, and Chevy Malibu. They all have safety features to help you during a crash. Let's see what happens after they crash into a wall in this test facility. First the Accord, now the Camry, and finally the Chevy Malibu.
This is OnStar. I received a signal that your Malibu's been in a crash. Do you need help?
Only Chevy Malibu is there for you after a crash. When you have OnStar automatic crash response, sensors built into the car can automatically alert an OnStar advisor, who immediately connects into your vehicle to see if you need help. She can forward crash details and your exact location to emergency personnel, even if you can't respond, which tends to leave the competition speechless. OnStar is standard for 1 year on 11 Chevy vehicles.
HarryLane.net is anything and everything automotive. Buying a new car? Listen to Harry's Car Buyers Sales Meeting, which will school you exactly how to go to the dealership and win. Harry answers all your car concerns on HarryLane.net, the WebMD.com of all automotive websites. HarryLane.net. To access, call 622-3032. That's 622-3032. More and more Car Concerns listeners are using the MPG gas caplet that Harry talks about on Car Concerns. Get up to 20% more miles per gallon. Harry is seeking 10 self-starting individuals who want to tell their friends and family about this incredible MPG gas caplet, getting you more miles per gallon while helping the environment through lower emissions out of your tailpipe. This is your opportunity to be in a fast-growing business with the earning potential that is unlimited. Enroll now at www.stayonfulllonger.com. That's stayonfulllonger.com, or call now, 622-3032, 622-3032, 622-3032.
Harry is all out to put more healthy drivers on the road. There is no more important part on your automobile than you yourself. In order for your vehicle to operate at 100% of its performance level, the driver has to be alert and comprehensive at all times. Harry has discovered a miracle of nature with the incredible drink from the moringa plant. Vija is 100% natural and rich in vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and other beneficial nutrients. Order now at healthydriver.com. That's healthydriver.com. Call now at 865-622-3032. 865-622-3032. That's 865-622-3032.
Advanced Transmissions in Lenoir City is Car Concern certified. Expert transmission work is the product of Advanced Transmission in Lenoir City. With the American Automobile Association seal of approval, Larry Atchley and Jack Harrison offer you their years of transmission services at affordable rates. Located at 200 West Broadway in Lenoir City, Advanced Transmissions has just received the Complaint-Free Year Award from the Better Business Bureau. Want to get it fixed right the first time? Then take your vehicle's transmission needs to Advanced Transmissions in Lenoir City. Free towing. Call them at 865-986-5050. That's 865-986-5050. Advanced Transmissions is Car Concern certified.
This is Car Concern with your host, Harry Douglas. If you have a car-related question, call 675-8255. Or if you're outside the 865 area code, call us toll-free at 877-958-5850. Now, here's Harry.
Hey, don't forget about my Harry's Green Dragon Cockroach Killer. Hey, if you want to learn more about it, just email me, Harry at carconcerns.com. It's a cockroach killer that's tough on roaches and not on you. Kills roaches, water bugs, and silverfish. I use it at my home. I wouldn't use anybody else. It's 100% green. It's 100% environmentally safe. No more toxic than table salt. Anyhow, let's go to Brian. He has a question for Trace. Hey, Brian, welcome to Car Concerns.
Oh, thanks, Harry. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, sir. I just have a question if he sees any correlation or any similarity to what's going on right now in 2009 and the 1920 contraction of credit and the bank panic, where it seemed, I mean, this was before my time, of course, I had to have read about it, but it seemed that the bankers of Wall Street were coming to the aid, as it were, to the different corporations for control of those corporations. Ford, I'm going to just say Ford particularly, because this is, after all, Car Concern.
Right.
And it seems.
Are you talking about the money that they loaned Ford back a few years ago?
No, I'm talking about in 1920.
Okay.
When they tried to take over the company by lending their support, and Mr. Ford said no, because he absolutely saw investment bankers as vultures, and he didn't want to sell his company out to them and have them have control over his company at the time.
Okay.
And he told them no, and he started sending cars out. He had to shut a few factories down, but he started sending the cars that he had out to the dealers, collect, and getting the money back later instead of from the folks. And he reduced the prices on his cars, even though there was no good sense to do so in an inflationary time. He did that. And do you see what Ford's trying to do right now to save themselves is anything like what happened in the 20s?
Ford's in the same boat as everybody, although they have a little cushion there, because Alan Mulally, when he came on board in 2006, he hawked the house for billions and billions of dollars, and that's what they've been burning through. But trust me, Ford's burning through cash just like General Motors and Chrysler are. They like to make you think that everything's fine at the house of Ford.
Well, I mean, that's true. They're on as shaky a ground as anybody else, but they are trying to stay away from the bailout by hawking even the Ford color, that little blue Ford logo.
The blue oval, right.
Is in hock up to its eyes, but, it's been liquidating stuff as fast as it can to try to stay afloat. And yes, it's burning through $4 billion or at least $1 billion a month. And
they think a triumph up there. They think a victory up there is when they slow the burn of cash down. Trace, any comments on what we're talking about here?
Yeah, well, to distinguish between the environments, in 1920, the great inflationary credit expansion was still taking place. Capital was moving into the less safe, less liquid assets. So even there was all this debt being taken on by the corporations and all this credit being extended by the banks who just created it out of thin air. And then as the contraction of the 20s began, which was just a minor contraction in contrast to what we're experiencing now, the bankers tried to seize control of all the various assets and things like that. But in 1933, Roosevelt made it illegal to hold gold. And what came out as a result of that is that the inflationary credit expansion continued with the creation of the IMF and Bretton Woods, and as evidenced by moving into using an illusion as currency in 1971 with Nixon. But this time around, in this case, we have the same problems with corporations being loaded up with lots of debt and the assets being collateralized with the credit contraction beginning. But how this is different is that this time, through the advent of the Internet and advances in technology, is that we can move back to using a commodity as currency in ordinary daily transactions. We can pay for a can of Coke with gold ounces nowadays, or with silver through technological advances, whereas we didn't have these tools available to us before last time. And so that's the reason why this is different, is because as capital continues burrowing down the liquidity pyramid, which I show in the free sample to my book, as capital keeps burrowing down there, it evaporates all of this credit that is attached to the corporations like Ford. And meantime, they're left gasping for air or cash, which is the oxygen that the businesses run on. And so we're going to, as credit is revoked from individuals and from corporations, it's going to suffocate a lot of these businesses, whether it's Ford or GM or GE or individuals with their student loans or their credit card debt or their mortgages, because getting those Federal Reserve note dollars to make the debt payments is going to become increasingly more difficult, because there aren't being any created through new lending, and the ones that are there, a lot of them are being destroyed as the debt defaults.
Hey, Trace, I got to cut you off there. We're going to come up against the CBS News. Hey, we've been talking to Trace Meyer. His book is The Great Credit Contradiction. Tell them where to get the book, Trace.
RunToGold.com.
RunToGold.com, folks. Hey, this is Larry Douglas. Hey, Larry Bradley up in Omaha, Nebraska. Thanks for being with me on this Car Concerns. Here comes the CBS News, whether I like it or not.
Well, there you go. That's the 34th episode of the RunToGold.com podcast. Thanks. Talk to you later. You've been listening to the RunToGold.com podcast, the premier source for applied monetary science on the web.